Hello everyone. Hope you're all doing great this evening. I have prepared the exam, and this is exam 2 review video that I'm doing for BSCI 117 fall 2020. Exam 2 will be 40 multiple choice questions. 10 questions from muscular system, 10 questions skeletal system, and 20 questions from the nervous system. Uh, as I said, it will all be multiple choice. You will have one attempt. I will give you plenty of time to take the exam. You have to take it in one setting. Uh, the exam will be available tomorrow morning, Tuesday, uh, but you will have plenty of time to take the exam. The deadline won't be until uh, next Monday or next Tuesday. I'll decide on the deadline, but I'll give you the weekend to watch this video and go over the sections that I'm going to refer you to. What I would recommend is for you to have a notepad, pen or a pencil, because I'm going to be constantly. I'm not going to be teaching. This is not going to be a lecture. It's an exam review. I'm going to be referring you to sections of lecture notes, supplemental notes, text readings, pages of text readings, segments of text readings. Uh, Sometimes I'm going to refer you to PowerPoint slides. So I want you to jot that down and write that down for each question that as I go over, and then go back and study those, read those, put them all together, and put all those material together and study them, and then take the exam. And I promise you'll do great on it. You'll do absolutely just fine. First question on the exam is asking about the basic structure of the skeletal muscle, specifically actin and myosin. I want you to know which one is the thick filament, which one is the thin filament, and which one has a cross bridge. For that, I would refer you mainly, specifically, to page 197 of Muscular System Text Reading, paragraph 1, that talks about the actin and myosin. Second part that I'm going to refer you is the PowerPoint of muscular physiology, slide number 20. And then I'm also going to refer you to page 2 of muscular system supplemental notes, right in the analogy section. So page 2 of muscular system supplemental notes, right in the section of the analogy, or slide 20 of muscular physiology PowerPoint, or page 197 of muscular system text reading. Next question is about basically what activates the cross bridge cycling. What activates the cross bridge cycling? I would refer you to PowerPoint presentation that I have posted on muscular physiology, slide number 14, and also page 196 of muscular system text reading, the section about the thick and thin filament. The best one to answer this question that asks about what activates cross bridge cycling, it would be to go to the muscular system text reading, page 196, under the segment, read the paragraph under the segment thick and thin filament. Okay? Next question is about muscle contraction cycle. Muscle contraction cycle. I would refer you to page 6 of muscular system supplemental notes, number 3, where it talks about detachment. Page 6 of muscular system supplemental notes, number 3, where it talks about detachments. You need basically read about the ATP section and how it talks about how you need a new ATP molecule for detachment to happen. For further clarification on this question, I would also refer you to page 200 of muscle system text reading. I want you to read the clinical note box that's on the bottom left hand corner, that's titled Rigor Mortis. Page 200 of muscle system text reading. Read the clinical note box that's on the bottom left hand side, that's titled Rigor Mortis. It talks about what happens when the muscle runs out of ATP. Next question is a very important question and a very important concept. I want you to know the sources of energy for muscle contraction or sources of ATP. I would refer you to Muscle Physiology PowerPoint slides 23 to 27. So Muscle Physiology PowerPoint slides 23 to 27. Look at the different sources. I don't want you to know the details or how they happen. Just know the different sources. There are about 4 or 5. There are different sources of energy for muscle contraction. I want you to know what they are. You don't need to be familiar with how they get broken down or how they get activated. Just know the sources. You can also find them on page 8 of Muscular System supplemental notes. However, for example, on page 8 of Muscular System supplemental notes, one of the sources is named fermentation. And when you look at the muscle physiology PowerPoint slides 23 to 27, you don't see fermentation. And you'll be like, well, this has said fermentation, this has said something else. This one says oxidative phosphorylation, this one doesn't say oxidative phosphorylation. They don't match. Where it's because a lot of the terms are interchangeable. So they can say fermentation, or they can simply say anaerobic glycolysis. The same thing, right? So be careful with that. Don't eliminate it because you don't see the exact phrasing, because that's not going to be like that. So page 8 of Muscular System supplemental notes and slides 23 to 27 of Muscular Physiology PowerPoint. Next question is continuation of the previous question, is asking about the time that's allowed for muscle contraction with these sources. Some of these sources would only allow you 30 minutes, 20 minutes. Some of them allow you up to 1 hour of continuous muscle contraction. So the best one that I found was on page 8 of Muscular System supplemental notes. It has a sentence underneath each of the sources that talks about the time allowed for muscle contraction. Next question is about gastrocnemius. I want you to be familiar with its origin and shape. For that, I would refer you to page 20 of Muscular System lecture notes, table 8.15, and also page 21 of Muscular System supplemental notes. It's an image on page 21 of Muscular System supplemental notes. I want you to look at the right hand side image where it shows you the posterior view of the right leg. And specifically, I want you to look at the gastrocnemius and see that it has two heads on its origin. So uh, be familiar with that and know the origin and shape of gastrocnemius. Next one is about what group of muscles make up the hamstrings. Very simple, very simple. You can either go to page 18 of Muscular System Supplemental Notes, it's in the study tip sections, or you can go to page 16 of Muscular System Lecture Notes, it's under table 8.14. Next one, I want you to be familiar with the muscles of the thoracic region, or basically what is the muscle that's in between ribs. For that, I would refer you to page 5 of Muscular System Lecture Notes, section 8.4, and the figure as well. Page 5 of Muscular System Lecture Notes. Be familiar with the muscles of the thoracic region and the muscle that's in between the ribs. What is that muscle that's in between the rib? What is it called? I want you to know the muscles that extend and flex the knee. So for that, since it's an open book exam, should be really easy. You can just draw down the table that I'm going to refer you to. Write down the muscles that extend the knee, and then write down the muscles that flex the knee. I would refer you to page 16 of Muscular System Lecture Notes, table 8.14. Next one is very simple. How are muscle names derived? Uh, how are we naming muscles and muscle names based on what factors? That's on page 1 of Muscular System Lecture Notes, table 8.1. Read about the shapes, the origin, and the location. So a lot of the namings of these muscles are based on their shapes, based on their origin, based on their location. And I'm going to give you an example of a muscle. I'm going to name a muscle and ask you what is this muscle name based on? Is it based on its origin? Is it based on its location? And it's very easy. You just have to go back to table 8.1, which is on page 1 of Muscular System Lecture Notes, and basically narrow it down. Uh, Next, I want you to know the bones of the skull, the bones that make up the skull. For that, go to page 3 of a Skeletal System Lecture Notes and look at table 6.1. The question is basically going to be which one of these bones is not part of the skull. So if you know the bones that make up the skull, if you know the skull bones, you can just eliminate. So table 6.1, page 3 of a Skeletal System Lecture Notes. I want you to know the difference between bone tissues and other connective tissues. There is one specific thing about bone tissues that you cannot find in connective tissue. And I want you to refer to page 1 of a Skeletal System Lecture Notes and read Objective A, where it talks about mineral storage. You can also go to page 4 of a Skeletal System Supplemental Notes for this question. But page 1 of a Skeletal System Lecture Notes, Objective A, where it talks about mineral storage. The next question is about the sphenoid bone. Very simple, straightforward. I would refer you to page 18 of a skeletal system supplemental notes, as well as page 12 of a skeletal system lecture notes, section 6.19. Next one is a comparison of male and female pelvis. You can find a table on page 22 of a skeletal system lecture notes, table 6.4, where it actually is comparing male pelvis to the female pelvis. So be familiar with that table and copy that table, print that table, cut it out, put it on another page, put it on your study guide, because you will need it when you get to the question that's asking you to compare the male pelvis to the female pelvis. So page 6 of a skeletal system lecture notes, page 22 of a skeletal system lecture notes, table 6.4. Next question is about the structure of long bones. A straightforward question. You can find more information on that on page 6 of a skeletal system lecture notes under objective F. I would read the whole paragraph. Read the whole paragraph, study the whole paragraph, and be familiar with the structure of long bones. Next one is about hyaline cartilage. I would refer you to page 50 of a skeletal system supplemental notes, and there you can read about hyaline cartilage, page 50 of a skeletal system supplemental notes. I want you to be familiar with the structure of humerus. For that, I would refer you to page 19 of a skeletal system lecture notes, section 6.33. I want you to be familiar with carpal bones of the hands. When I say carpal bones, I mean wrist bones. Basically, they are interchangeable terms. Carpal bones are same as wrist bones. So know what the wrist bones are, or know what the carpal bones are. For that, I would refer you to page 40 of a skeletal system supplemental notes. Next question is asking about the nerve impulse overview, the overview of nerve impulse. I would refer you to page 10 of Nervous System 1 supplemental notes. Because nervous system, remember, all the notes from nervous system are divided into two sections. So I'm going to be telling you which section, or if when I say nervous system 1 supplemental notes, that's part 1, the notes of nervous system part 1, and then we have nervous system part 2. So for this question, go to page 10 of nervous system 1 supplemental notes. Read the whole page. Next question is about nerve impulse conduction. Basically asking about saltatory and continuous conduction, which one is faster, which one is slower, which one is myelinated, which one is unmyelinated, which one is continuous, what is saltatory. For that, go to page 14 of Nervous System 1 supplemental notes, as well as page 8 of Nervous System Part 1 lecture notes, section 9.13. I want you to know what the synapse is and what a synaptic cleft is. For that, go to page 8 of Nervous System Part 1 lecture notes, objective F, and also page 16 of Nervous System Part 1 supplemental notes. So definitely be familiar with what is a synapse and what is a synaptic cleft. Next one is a question about the steps in conducting a nerve impulse. In this case, we are talking about resting membrane potential, depolarization and repolarization. The best, sorry, I went blank for a second. I would refer you to page 10 of Nervous System Part 1 supplemental notes. That page has the best simple, short, easy to understand explanation of the steps in conducting a nerve impulse, because it can get complicated, but definitely know the steps and read each paragraph regarding each step, starting with the resting and then depolarization, repolarization, uh, whether inside the cell is negative or positive, what's going to happen to inside the cell, be familiar with what's going to happen with the potassium, what's going to happen with the sodium, and all that good stuff. So page 10 of Nervous System Part 1 supplemental notes. Next, I want you to be familiar with general types of neurons, mainly locations of unipolar, bipolar, and multipolar neurons. You can find those on page 4 of Nervous System Part 1 supplemental notes. The next question is about postsynaptic membrane. Postsynaptic membrane. Know what you can find on a postsynaptic membrane. I would refer you to page 8 of Nervous System Lecture Notes Part 1, Objective F, and further go down to page 9 and look at figure 9.7. Look at the postsynaptic membrane and see what's sitting on top of the postsynaptic membrane, or what postsynaptic membrane contains. Comparison of autonomic and somatic nervous system. For that, go to page 23 of Nervous System Part 2 Lecture Notes and look at table 11.2. Table 11.2. It's asked about, I'm going to give you basically a tissue and ask you whether it's controlled by somatic or it's autonomic. Well, if it's a voluntary tissue, and by now you should know which tissues are voluntary, which groups of tissues are voluntary. Would it be under autonomic nervous system, or would it be under somatic? So that you can find that on page 23 of Nervous System Part 2 Lecture Notes, table 11.2. And next one is basically comparison of sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. Sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. Best table that I found was on page 26 of Nervous System Part 2 Lecture Notes, table 11.5. I would copy that table or have that table handy so you can refer to it when you get to that question, because some organs are controlled by the parasympathetic and some are by sympathetic. Because, for example, when you're in the jungle and you see a bear, which system is going to get activated? It's going to be sympathetic nervous system that's going to get activated. So if when sympathetic nervous system gets activated, what happens? Your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up, you start running, you become more cautious. You're not gonna the digestive system is not gonna get active. You're not gonna need to go to the bathroom, or you're not all of a sudden gonna basically the digestive system would literally shut down for a few seconds when you're under the control of sympathetic nervous system, because that's fight or flight. And when it's rest and digest, that's when sympathetic system or parasympathetic kicks in, and that's when basically the digestive system gets activated. I want you to know where sensory nerves originate and terminate. Go to page 15 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, Part 2, Section 11.4, and read the paragraph, specifically the line where it says where sensory nerves terminate. Next question is functions of brain structures. So, as this is an open book test, it's going to be very easy. It's going to be in a table, going to give you the brain structures and their function. So, have that table handy. That table is table 10.1 on page 2 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, part 2. So, go to part 2 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, page 2, table 10.1. I'm gonna give you a function and I'm gonna ask you which of these structures matches with the function, of course. So it's gonna be really easy. Uh, you might not even have to refer to the table. By now, you should actually know what the structure I would be referring to when I give you the function. I want you to know the parts of reflex arc. For that, go to page 8 of Nervous System Supplemental Notes, Part 2, section under Somatic Reflex Arc. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. I want you to know the order as well. Which one is the first one? Which one is the second one? Which one is the third part? So parts of somatic reflex arc. It can be found on page 8 of Nervous System Supplemental Notes, Part 2. Next question is about distribution of vagus nerves. It's on page 18 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, Part 2. Read the whole paragraph under section 11.9. Next one asks you about types of cranial nerves and which are mixed, which are sensory, or which ones are motor. Again, that's a table. You don't have to memorize it. You can just copy the table, print out the table, put it in your notes. It can be found on page 16 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, Part 2, Table 11.1. Table 11.1, page 16 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, Part 2. I'm going to give you a nerve and I'm going to ask you whether it's mixed, whether it's sensory, or whether it's motor. I want you to be able to describe the cerebrum. For that, go to page 2 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, Part 2, Objective C. Read Objective C and also read section 10.4 right below Objective C. And that describes the whole cerebrum. So, page 2 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, Part 2, Objective C and section 10.4. Last one, and one that's very important, is importance of blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier. What is blood-brain barrier? I would refer you to page 11 of Nervous System Lecture Notes, Part 2, Objective J. Objective J. And read about the blood-brain barrier. That should do it, guys. 40 question, multiple choice. You will have plenty of time. I hope this review helped. If you have any questions, email me. If you have any questions on the exam that you don't understand and doesn't make sense, email me as well. Of course, after you submit your exam, you will be able to see your grade, but as you know by now, I do adjust the grades based on class statistics. When all grades come in, I look at the class average and other statistics and give out a curve. Sometimes I throw out questions depending on the circumstance and depending on the question and the exam and how well you guys do on the exam. don't be. I'll post the exam tomorrow, but don't be rushed to take it. Don't be in a rush to take it. Take your time. You will have the whole weekend, probably until Monday night, to take the exam. So review the materials, watch this video, go back and jot down the sections that I told you about, the pages I told you to read, the tables I told you to copy, and the segments I told you to look at. Put all of them together and make a study guide for yourself from those, and you should do just fine on the exam. Again, email me if you have any questions. Thank you, guys.